teacher cut off a black girl's hair at school, but her mom's reaction left everyone silent. The clippers buzzed loud, like angry bees, inside the nurse's office. 12-year-old Ariel sat frozen in the chair, her legs stiff, her back shaking. Long, beautiful braids dropped to the floor one by one, like feathers ripped from a bird. Her tears ran quietly down her cheeks. She didn't cry out. She didn't fight. She just sat there as the last pieces of herself were taken. To her, this wasn't just hair. This was how she hid the patches where no hair grew. It was how she kept kids from staring. It was how she walked through school without having to explain the word alopecia every day. It was comfort. It was safety. And now it was gone. Standing behind her was Ms. Rohr, the same teacher who always found something wrong with Ariel. The same one who said her art was a distraction, her voice too soft, and her hair too much. Today, Ms. Rohr had decided Ariel's braids broke the dress code. And when Ariel tried to explain, to say her mom had filed a note with the school, because of her condition, Ms. Rohr just told her to stop lying. The school nurse, unsure and uncomfortable, had brought out the clippers. Ms. Rohr told her it was school policy. She said she'd already checked Ariel's file and there was nothing in it about a medical reason to keep the braids. That was a yeah. Bye. But no one questioned her. No one called Ariel's father. No one waited to hear her side. They just started cutting. Now Ariel sat alone, pieces of her braided crown in a pile on the cold tile. The noise had stopped, but the silence felt louder. Her scalp was bare. Her chest ached. Her hands trembled as she reached up to feel the short patches of hair that remained, uneven, exposed and stinging from the clippers. The air hit her head like ice. Her breath caught in her throat. "Take a few minutes to collect yourself," Ms. Rohr said with a cold voice as she placed the clippers back on the nurse's counter. "Then you can return to class." And she walked out. The nurse stood there for a moment, lips pressed tight, eyes uncertain. I'm sorry, Ariel," she whispered. I didn't think she'd actually..." She didn't finish the sentence. Ariel didn't look. She couldn't. All she wanted was her mom. But her mom wasn't home. She was overseas on military duty. Ariel didn't know where exactly. Just on base, like her dad always said. Far away. Too far to stop what had just happened. The door creaked open again. It was Maya, her best friend. Maya stepped in quickly, her eyes wide. When she saw Ariel in the chair, she stopped moving. Her mouth opened like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out at first. Then she pulled off her hoodie and walked straight to Ariel. She didn't say anything. She just gently placed the hoodie over her friend's head, then knelt beside her and whispered, "I saw. I recorded it. I swear, Ariel, we're gonna fix this." Ariel didn't reply. Her lips stayed still, but one tear slipped down her cheek and dropped onto her shirt. That evening, the video made its way online. It was shaky, recorded from Maya's phone, but it was enough. You could see Ms. Rohr dragging Ariel down the hallway. You could see Ariel's scared face, and you could hear her voice, small but clear, saying, "Please, I have a medical reason. Please call my dad." People started sharing it. Some were shocked, some were angry. Some asked questions like, "Why would a teacher do this to a child?" But the school? They didn't say much. A short statement went out. "We are aware of a misunderstanding involving a dress code violation. The teacher has been suspended for 1 day while we review the matter." 1 day, that's all. They called it a misunderstanding. As if shaving a girl's head for having braids was just a mix-up. As if it wasn't about power. As if Ariel's tears didn't matter. But something the school didn't know was this. The video was still spreading. And on the other side of the world, Naomi Daniels, a U.S. Army lieutenant colonel, sat in a quiet room, scrolling through her messages after a long day on base. One video stood out. It had no title, just sent by her husband. She opened it, and when she saw her daughter's face, on screen, terrified, being dragged through her own school, something inside Naomi went cold. She didn't cry, she didn't yell. She stood up, straightened her uniform, and walked to her commanding officer's quarters with one goal: emergency leave. Because this wasn't just about hair. This was about dignity, and Naomi Daniels was coming home. Ariel hadn't spoken a single word since it happened. Her dad, Eric, had picked her up from school the moment the nurse called. No explanation had been given over the phone, just a strange, tense voice saying his daughter was waiting in the office and that she'd had an incident. When he arrived, Ariel was already sitting on the bench outside, her face buried in Maya's hoodie, her knees pulled to her chest. She looked so small. It wasn't until they got home that he saw what was underneath the hood, and when the hoodie slipped off and revealed her scalp, shaved, uneven, patchy, he froze in the hallway. His heart sank. Something inside him broke. Not just because her hair was gone, but because of the way she looked at the floor, like she didn't want to be seen at all. He tried to speak. But she just walked past him, silent, straight up the stairs, into her room. She shut the door behind her, not slammed it, just shut it gently, like even that took too much energy. Eric stood in the hallway, unsure what to do with his hands. He pressed them to his face and let out a breath that shook the walls. Upstairs, Ariel didn't cry. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The window was cracked, letting in a soft breeze, but the world outside felt far away, like it wasn't for her anymore. Her sketch pad was still open on her desk from that morning. She hadn't touched it since. It was hard to explain what it felt like, not just to have her hair taken, but to be stripped of something deeper. She wasn't loud, she wasn't popular, she wasn't the type to fight, but her art was her voice. Her braids were her armor. They made her feel normal, and now they were gone. Not because she chose to take them out, but because someone decided she didn't deserve to wear them. That night, her dad made dinner. Her favorite. Garlic noodles with crispy tofu. He placed the plate gently outside her door and knocked. "I made something for you, baby," he said, voice soft. "Just a little food. You need to eat something." No answer. "I'll leave it here," he added, stepping back. She didn't open the door. Eric walked back downstairs and sat on the couch with his phone in his lap. He'd called Naomi 6 times, left 3 voicemails, 2 video messages. No response yet. He knew she was on base, on limited communication, but he needed her now more than ever. Needed her to know what had been done. Needed her to see Ariel. But the only response was silence. At 2 a.m., Ariel still hadn't come out of her room. The plate of food remained untouched. The lights were off. Eric sat in the kitchen, reading and rereading the school's statement. A misunderstanding. 1-day suspension. No mention of Ariel's medical form. No mention of the clippers. No apology. Just cold, careful words meant to protect themselves. He closed the email and opened Maya's message instead. The video was only 15 seconds long, but it was enough. In it, Ariel could be seen in the hallway, being led away by Ms. Rohr, her face full of fear, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "Please, I have a condition. Please call my dad." And still, they cut her hair. Eric watched the clip, again, and again. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened on the table. He'd served in the army too, years ago, but nothing in war had made him feel this helpless. He wasn't the kind of man who got loud, but this made his blood boil. Few miles away, Maya sat with her older sister Jasmine at their kitchen table. "She still hasn't answered my texts," Maya said, biting her lip. "I don't want to make it worse." Jasmine was uploading the video to a larger platform. "You're not making it worse," she said. "You're helping her speak when they tried to silence her. You're doing the right thing. I just want my best friend back." "She'll come back," Jasmine replied. "But first, the world has to see what they did." By sunrise, the video had 10,000 views. By noon, it had been reshared by a small local news account. By evening, it was viral, but Ariel still hadn't spoken, not a single word. She stayed curled up in bed, the hoodie pulled over her head, the covers tucked around her body like armor. Sometimes she'd blink up at the ceiling. Other times she'd close her eyes, trying to disappear completely. Eric paced the hallway outside her room. He pressed his forehead against the door. "We're gonna fix this," he whispered. But Ariel didn't move. The wheels of the transport plane touched down just after dawn. Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Daniels had been in the air for over 20 hours, crossing time zones and continents. But her mind had never left that 15-second video. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Ariel's face. Not the little girl smile she remembered from birthdays or bedtime stories, but the look in her daughter's eyes as she was dragged down a school hallway, scared and humiliated. Naomi had faced war zones. She had walked into enemy territory, led soldiers through gunfire, watched grown men cry out in fear. But nothing compared to the quiet agony she felt watching her daughter's braids fall to the floor. When she landed, her boots hit the ground like a warning. She didn't even go home first. Still in uniform, still in command mode. She drove straight to Lakeside Middle School, and when she walked through those front doors, the building held its breath. The hallways weren't noisy that morning. Teachers peered out of classrooms. Students whispered. One janitor, pushing his mop slowly down the corridor, paused and gave her a respectful nod. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't just a mother coming to complain. This was something else. Her medals caught the morning light. Her eyes were unreadable. She moved like someone on a mission. The secretary at the front desk looked up, startled. "Can I help?" "Yes. I'm here for Principal Wexley. I won't be waiting." Her voice was calm, not raised, not sharp, just absolute, like gravity. The secretary reached for the phone in silence. Naomi walked past her. She didn't knock on the principal's door. She opened it and stepped inside. Principal Wexley looked up, mid-sip of his coffee. The cup froze halfway to his lips. He recognized her. Of course he did. Everyone in the school had seen the video by now. "Mrs. Daniels," he said, quickly setting down the cup. We were just beginning our formal review of the incident involving your daughter." "It's Lieutenant Colonel Daniels," she replied, closing the door behind her. "And you had 3 days to review. I'm here now." Wexley's mouth opened, then closed again. He gestured toward a chair. Naomi remained standing. 3 days, she said, since a teacher forcibly shaved my daughter's head, since a child with a medical condition was punished, humiliated, and silenced, since you issued a 1-day suspension and called it a misunderstanding. Wexley tried to speak. She held up a hand. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here for the truth and for justice." He swallowed hard. "I reviewed the files myself," he said. "There was no clear documentation about Ariel's condition in the system." "That's a lie," Naomi interrupted. Still calm, still steady. "My husband and I filed the exemption forms last fall, with your office and your nurse. You knew." "Perhaps there was a misfiling," he said quickly, shifting in his seat. Naomi leaned forward. "You buried it." Her voice didn't shake. "You ignored my daughter's complaint from weeks ago. You allowed that teacher, your employee, to drag her from class, call her a liar, and cut off her hair like it was trash. And when she cried out, you did nothing. Now you're hoping this goes away quietly." Wexley's face tightened. "Look, We're under pressure here. There are protocols. These things take time. My daughter's dignity didn't need more time, she said. It needed protection. You failed her. There was a pause. Long. Heavy. Then she placed a folder on his desk. Inside were copies of Ariel's medical, paperwork, emails between Naomi and the school nurse, a printed version of the video, and a legal notice signed by a civil rights attorney. I suggest you read that carefully, she said. You'll be hearing from more than just us. Before Wexley could respond, she turned and walked out. She didn't stop at the exit. She headed for the teacher's lounge. Inside, half a dozen staff members stood around the coffee machine, mid-conversation. The moment she stepped in, they froze. Ms. Roar was there. Her back was to the door. She turned slowly. Their eyes met. The last time Naomi had seen that face, it was years ago, in basic training. A woman who refused to follow orders, who filed false complaints against black soldiers, who blamed others for her failures, who was eventually discharged. Naomi had known it then, and she knew it now. This woman had waited years to get her power back, and she'd used it on a child. My daughter trusted you, Naomi said, voice low. And you broke her. Ms. Roar opened her mouth, but she had no words, because there was no excuse. No handbook policy, no dress code rule, not for what she'd done. Naomi took one last look around the room. This school has a choice, she said. Protect children, or protect cowards. Then she left. Outside, the wind tugged at the edges of her uniform. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just walked, tall and steady, because she wasn't done. This wasn't just about one child anymore. It was about every child. Naomi Daniels didn't go home to rest. Not yet. By the time she left Lakeside Middle School, her hands were already moving, calling her lawyer, emailing military contacts, requesting every document, every file, every policy connected to the school's dress code. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't post on social media. She gathered proof, because proof speaks. By noon, Naomi sat in her small home office, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by folders, flash drives, and sticky notes. Her husband, Eric, walked in with 2 mugs of coffee and placed one beside her. You up? Sure you don't want to lie down for a bit? Naomi looked up. Not until I find out exactly who knew what and when. Eric didn't argue. He just sat beside her, silent, supportive. He pulled up the school's parent portal on his tablet and opened Ariel's digital file. Naomi scrolled through the forms. There it was. Medical condition, alopecia areata. Approved, signed, dated by the school nurse. Naomi narrowed her eyes. So they had it. They knew. Her phone buzzed. It was Maya's older sister, Jasmine. I found the email, she said. The one I mentioned. Between Ms. Roar and another teacher. She said, Ariel needed to be taught a lesson. I'm sending the screenshot now. Naomi's jaw clenched. Thank you. You just gave us motive. While Naomi gathered evidence, Ariel was still locked inside herself. She hadn't returned to school. She barely came out of her room. Her sketch pad lay untouched on her desk. Her pencils stayed in the box. Some nights she would curl into a ball under the covers and whisper, I want it to be over, so quietly that Eric could barely hear her through the door. And every time he did, his heart broke a little more. But something was starting to shift. Because while Ariel stayed quiet, the world outside was getting louder. Maya's video had reached nearly 50,000 views. Then 100,000. People weren't just watching. They were sharing, commenting, asking questions. Why would a teacher cut a student's hair? Where are the parents? Who approved this? Then the national media picked it up, and Naomi finally spoke. Dressed in uniform, seated at her dining table, she recorded a short video. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Daniels. I've served this country for 20 years. But I never expected the battle for justice would start in my own daughter's school. The video was posted by a veterans advocacy page. It spread fast. By the next morning, Naomi had messages from news outlets, civil rights attorneys, medical organizations, and thousands of parents across the country, especially Black mothers, sharing their own stories of school humiliation, of dress codes used to shame their children. One message: simply read, "Your daughter is all our daughters. We stand with you." Meanwhile, the school scrambled to respond. Principal Wexley held a private meeting with district lawyers. "This is spiraling," he said, loosening his tie. "We need to make this go away." "Offer a meeting," one lawyer said. "Say we're open to mediation." "Should we suspend Roar longer?" "Not without more evidence," the lawyer replied quickly. "We'll look weak." Across town, Jason Reed, the school's art teacher, sat in his car, reading the same statement the school had issued. A misunderstanding, temporary suspension, pending review. He closed his eyes. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. He remembered Ariel sitting in his classroom, sketching quietly in the corner. How she'd once stayed after school to clean paintbrushes even though she hadn't used them. How she'd gifted him a hand-drawn birthday card last year, without telling anyone. She was the kind of student teachers prayed for. And now she was, hiding under her covers, afraid to be seen. Jason walked into the principal's office before the bell rang. "I'm not here for drama," he said. "I'm here to speak truth." Wexley raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Reed, if this is about the video, it's about the girl," Jason interrupted. "The one we failed." Wexley leaned back. "You should be careful what you say in public. You know how quick people twist stories. Sometimes silence twists things more," Jason said, then left without another word. By the end of the week, parents began calling the school. Dozens of them. Some angry, some confused, some scared. What happened to that little girl? Why was she punished for a medical issue? My daughter wears braids too. Is she next? The district sent out another letter, longer this time but still cold. Still missing the one thing Ariel deserved, an apology. Naomi didn't stop. She filed a formal complaint with the Office for Civil Rights. She sent Ariel's medical documents to the State Education Board. She filed a civil lawsuit through her attorney. And she called a press conference. In front of cameras, she spoke clearly. No one is above accountability. Not even a teacher. Not even a school. Ariel watched the press conference from her room. Her mom looked so strong, standing behind the microphones, voice calm but powerful. Ariel reached for her sketchpad for the first time in days. She flipped to a clean page. She drew her mother in uniform, standing tall, one hand on Ariel's shoulder. The other holding back a rising storm. The wind had changed. What started as a quiet, personal pain inside one family's home had now reached national ears. And it wasn't slowing down. Naomi Daniels' press conference played on nearly every local news station that evening. Her words weren't loud, but they echoed. Not because she was a soldier, but because she was a mother. And because something deep in her voice made it clear, she wasn't speaking just for Ariel. She was speaking for every child who'd ever been silenced. The next morning, something strange happened. Students at Lakeside Middle School walked in wearing head wraps. Not just the girls, boys too. Bright colors, simple scarves, old bandanas. Some had no hair underneath. Others had plenty, but they all wore them for one reason: Ariel. No one had organized it. It wasn't a planned protest, just quiet defiance. Ms. Rohr walked past them in the hallway, eyes twitching as she noticed the change. One boy nodded politely. "It's Spirit Day," he said. "We're honoring courage." She said nothing. Inside her classroom, only half the students showed up. Some had been pulled out by parents. Others simply refused to attend. That same morning, Mr. Jason Reed, the art teacher, returned to his classroom with a copy of Ariel's sketchbook under his arm. He had asked for permission the night before. Now, as his students sat quietly, wondering what he would say, he placed the book on the desk and told them what had happened. Not everything. Not the legal parts. Not the details about the nurse or the lawsuit. Just the truth. That one of their classmates had been hurt, not by an accident, but by a choice. Ariel didn't do anything wrong, he said, but someone in power used their position to hurt her anyway. That's not discipline. That's cruelty. A few students looked down. Some stared at him wide-eyed. Then one girl raised her hand. "Is she okay?" Mr. Reed smiled sadly. "She's healing, and you can help." He left the sketchbook, open on the table. "When you finish your assignments, draw something kind, something strong, something you'd want her to see." By lunchtime, the page was full. Back at the Daniels home, Naomi's inbox was overflowing. Messages from parents, students, journalists, even other teachers. One stood out. It came from a former Lakeside student named Tasha. She had been in Ms. Rohr's class 5 years earlier. In the message, she wrote, "I never told anyone what happened to me, but when I saw your daughter's story, I knew I had to speak. I had braids too. She called them too urban, said they made me look aggressive. One day she grabbed a pair of scissors and cut one off. I cried. She told me to stop being dramatic. My parents didn't want trouble, so we let it go. But I never forgot." Naomi forwarded the message to her attorney. This was no longer just one incident. It was a pattern. Meanwhile, Ariel sat at the window, hoodie pulled over her head, watching the rain blur the streetlights outside. She still hadn't spoken much, but she was drawing again, page after page, some filled with swirls of darkness and red storms. Others with soft skies, trees, and girls with half-grown hair looking out at wide fields. Each drawing said something she didn't have the words for. And in the middle of her latest piece, a school hallway filled with shadows, she drew a tiny figure at the end, holding a bright lantern. Her way of saying, "I'm still here." That evening, Naomi got a call from a quiet voice she didn't recognize at first. "Mrs. Daniels, this is Alex Baker. I work IT at Lakeside. I think I have something you need to see." He sounded nervous, careful, but serious. They agreed to meet in the parking lot of a grocery store 3 towns over. Alex was in his car, a baseball cap pulled low. He handed her a flash drive. "It's the full footage from the school cameras that day, including the nurse's office." Naomi stared at him. "I thought it was deleted," she said. "It was supposed to be," he replied. "The principal told me to wipe it, but I made a backup first." She gripped the drive tightly. "I couldn't live with myself," he added. "Not after what they did to that little girl." Naomi drove home in silence. Later that night, she and Eric sat together, watching the footage in the dark. There was no sound, just grainy video, but it showed everything. Ariel being pulled down the hall, her pleading, her shaking hands. Ms. Rohr pushing her into the chair, the clippers turning on. Ariel crying silently. It was worse than Naomi had imagined. Eric covered his mouth. Naomi's hands tightened into fists. The next day, they submitted the footage to the state board. The school couldn't hide behind policy anymore. This wasn't about hair. This was about power, and they had just lost theirs. The courtroom was packed. It had taken months to get here. Months of paperwork, protests, meetings, more nights of Ariel crying herself to sleep than her parents cared to count. But now, they were here. Ariel, wrapped in a soft blue headscarf, sat between her parents. Her fingers gripped the edge of her chair, her nails digging into the cushion. She didn't speak. She didn't look around. But she was present. And for her, That was a victory. Across the room sat the people who had tried to hide everything. Ms. Rohr in a plain navy dress. Principal. Wexley with his hands folded tightly, avoiding eye contact. Behind them, lawyers whispered, flipped through folders and passed notes. But the truth didn't need notes. The truth had video. The judge, a serious-looking woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, entered and took her seat. "We're here today to determine accountability for the actions taken against a minor. Let us proceed." Naomi's attorney, Grace Yamada, stood with calm authority. She spoke clearly and slowly, her voice respectful but filled with quiet fire. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," she began, "this is not a case about school rules. It is not about a misunderstanding. This is about power, misused, deliberately." She turned toward Ariel. A child trusted her school to protect her, but instead she was dragged from class, humiliated and physically violated by someone in charge, and the system around her allowed it. Then came the video. Grainy, silent, but unmistakable. You didn't need sound to hear Ariel's fear. You didn't need words to feel her heartbreak. The courtroom was still. Even the judge's expression shifted as the footage showed Ariel being led by the arm, her small body stiff, her face full of confusion. Then, the clippers, her braids falling. Her hands shaking. A few people looked away. Some cried quietly. Others simply stared, stunned. When the screen faded to black, Grace spoke again. "You saw it. And now we ask you to do what her school did not. See her, hear her, protect her." The school's defense attorney tried to shift the story. "There was no written intent to harm," he said. "The teacher acted under policy. But when the emails were presented, the ones where Ms. Rohr had written, 'She's testing my patience,' and 'I'm going to teach this one a lesson,' even that excuse started to fall apart." Ms. Rohr was called to the stand. At first, she played calm. "I've been a teacher for over 20 years, she said. "I care about my students. I was simply following our rules." Grace nodded. "And in your experience, have you ever shaved the hair off any other student?" "No," she admitted. "Then why Ariel?" "I didn't believe her excuse," Ms. Rohr said flatly. "She said she had some condition, but there wasn't anything." "In the file?" Grace stepped forward. "There was." She held up the printed form. The one signed, dated, and received by the school nurse months before. The same one Ms. Rohr had said didn't exist. "And when you ignored this, when you told the nurse you had parental permission to remove her braids even though you didn't, was that part of school policy too?" Ms. Rohr opened her mouth, closed it. Her face reddened. I might have made a judgment call," she muttered. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Grace asked softly. "A judgment call. On a child's body. A child with a medical condition. A black child in a classroom where you held all the power. No answer. Just silence." Then the nurse was called. Her voice was shaky but honest. "I should have stopped it. I didn't want to cause trouble. But I knew it wasn't right. I'll live with that." Naomi sat listening, her hand resting gently on Ariel's back. Her daughter had barely blinked the entire time, but she stayed strong. Then, the moment came. "Ariel," the judge said gently, "you don't have to speak, but if you'd like to, the court is ready to listen." For a moment, everyone thought she would decline. But then, Ariel stood. She walked slowly to the front, her scarf still wrapped tight around her head. She climbed onto the small step stool and turned to face the judge. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "But clear. I tried to tell them," she said. "I told her I had alopecia. I asked her to call my dad. I begged her not to cut my hair." She paused. Her hands shook, but she didn't listen. She looked across the room at Ms. Rohr. She never listened. Not to me. Not to anyone who looked like me. Then she looked back at the judge. I don't want revenge. I just want to feel safe again. The judge nodded. Thank you, Ariel. That was very brave. Back at their seats, Naomi pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead. You were perfect, she whispered. The trial stretched on for 2 more days. More witnesses, more documents, more arguments. But the damage was done. The jury had seen what needed to be seen. They had heard what needed to be heard. And when they came back with their decision, it wasn't just a win, it was a message. The jury didn't take long. 3 hours after closing statements, the courtroom doors opened again. 12 faces returned, each carrying the weight of a decision that would be remembered far beyond those walls. Ariel sat upright beside her parents. Her scarf was blue that day. Soft sky blue, the color of calm, the color of healing. She didn't speak, but her hands were wrapped around her sketchbook like it was part of her heartbeat. The judge asked the question, Has the jury reached a verdict? The forewoman stood, a middle-aged black woman with silver streaks in her hair and steady eyes. We have, Your Honor. She read the paper slowly, clearly. In the matter of Ariel Daniels versus the Lakeside School District, Principal Thomas Wexley and teacher Evelyn Rohr, she paused. We find the defendants liable on all counts. Naomi closed her eyes and exhaled. Eric's hand gripped Ariel's shoulder gently. Ariel didn't cry. She just nodded once, her head steady, her face unreadable, her heart somewhere. Between relief and quiet disbelief, the jury continued. We award compensatory damages of $2 million. We award punitive damages of $5 million from the school district, $1 million from Principal Wexley personally, and $2 million from Ms. Rohr. Gasps filled the room. The reporters in the back scribbled wildly. It was one of the largest judgments in the state's history for a school-related civil rights case. But for the Daniels family, the number wasn't the victory. The truth was, as the judge read the final statement, she looked directly at Ariel. This court acknowledges the trauma you experienced, and we thank you for your strength, your courage, and your voice. After court adjourned, the family walked outside. Dozens of cameras flashed. Supporters stood with signs that read, Justice for Ariel, Protect our children, our hair, our dignity. Naomi stepped up to the microphones. Her words were steady, quiet, and full of something stronger than anger, clarity. This wasn't just about one bad teacher or one broken policy. This was about a system that too often fails children who don't fit someone else's mold. My daughter deserved safety. She deserved respect. And when that was stolen from her, she stood. Back up. She turned slightly and gestured to Ariel. She is not a victim. She is the beginning of change. That evening, while the world processed the verdict, the Daniels family sat on the floor of their living room. No cameras, no headlines, just quiet. Eric brought out ice cream, vanilla for him and Naomi, cookie dough for Ariel. No one talked about the trial. Instead, they asked Ariel what she wanted to do with her art next. She surprised them both. I want to start something, she said, like a place where kids can come and draw if they've been hurt or scared or just silenced. Naomi looked at her, heart swelling. You want to build a safe space. Ariel nodded. Yeah, one that listens. And she did. 2 months. Later, the stripped project opened its doors inside a converted warehouse. Soft lights, open tables, paint, pencils, clay, even old music equipment. Every Saturday, kids from all over the city came. Some had been bullied, some had medical conditions, some just needed to feel seen. They didn't have to talk, they just had to create. Ariel welcomed them all. She didn't lead, she didn't stand at the front. She just sat quietly, drawing in her own corner, letting them come to her when they were ready. And they did, one by one, sometimes in silence, sometimes with tears, sometimes with laughter. Meanwhile, the school changed too. Under pressure from parents, media, and state lawmakers, Lakeside Middle School replaced its entire administration. A new principal was brought in, someone with a background in trauma-informed education. The dress code was rewritten, with input from students and families. Cultural hairstyles were embraced, not punished, and all staff were required to complete training in equity and medical sensitivity. Ms. Rohr lost her license permanently. She was also charged criminally, though Ariel chose not to attend that hearing. "I've already faced her once," she said. "That's enough." Months passed. Then one day, a package arrived from the Smithsonian American History Museum. Inside was a letter. They wanted to feature Ariel's original sketchbook in an exhibit about youth-led justice movements in American history. At first, Ariel hesitated. Then she opened the sketchbook to the final page, a drawing of herself, bald, proud, standing tall in a school hallway. No longer small, no longer afraid. Above the sketch, she had written, "You tried to erase me, but I redrew myself." She sent it in. Later that year, standing quietly in the museum beside her display, she watched as strangers stopped to read. Her words. Some cried. Some just stood silently. And Ariel? She smiled. She wasn't the same girl who had once hidden behind braids and silence. She was still healing, still learning. But she had found something deeper than hair. Her voice. And once found, she never lost it again.